live captions for accessibility, not stop transcription, start transcription. Okay. All right. Welcome to CLO3D. For those of you online, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat window. Also, we did start a Slack for this. I'll have both of those open. I'm going to be manning the questions and focusing on the questions in the chat window on Teams as well as on Slack, and relaying those to Chrissy and DJ. I guess we can start our presentation. Here,
yeah,
share.
And then I did the window. So if you do window.
This one?
Yep, and then it's right there.
This one? Okay. And let's present. Okay. So I guess, Chrissy, you put the slide together. Do you want to? No, just kidding. So the purpose of these meetups, this is kind of like a co-curricular thing. Digital fashion is something that is integral for you to know. The industry's asking for it. They're even asking for certifications. We don't know about setting those up just yet. We're going to be talking to Chloe about that. But the purpose of these meetups, these extra information based skill set kind of workshops, is to learn new skills, to perfect those skills, and to learn from each other, so to kind of create a community. So all of you should probably maybe exchange information, see who's online. Maybe do you have friends that already know Chloe, or that you can kind of work together to learn Chloe. And the other thing is, with the Slack channel that we set up, that's for you guys to communicate with us. We're going to be on there too. If we see cool workshops or events, we're going to post them on those that have to do with digital fashion. So kind of starting to create a community of folks that want to learn this and have an interest in learning from each other as well. And we learn from each other.
Yes, we learn from each other all the time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You never stop learning.
Nope.
So this is the agenda of what we're going to be doing today. Brief introductions, then there's a cute little video of what Chloe is and its sister product, Marvelous Designer, and how they developed Chloe from Marvelous Designer, or the lineage. Then we're going to go into discussing the physical and digital workspaces, identify those commonalities. We're going to look at how you communicate key components, focusing on the sloper pattern in both 2D and 3D. Discuss the development of the sloper paddle. Sloper paddle, what the? Excuse me. I had a smoothie, no caffeine this morning. Discuss the development of a women's bodice sloper, not a sloper paddle, whatever the heck that is. Then we'll go into some playtime, talk about some resources in closing, and then next steps, identifying the Slack, putting that in there, the link, as well as the next workshop, which is focused on grading. So we're the facilitators, or the motley crew of mischief makers that want really bad 3D and digital fashion and digitalization to have a stronger component here at the fashion school. So I used to teach the Intro to Fashion Tech classes. Now I have limited teaching. So right now I'm teaching biodesign, which is through DI, which is super exciting. It's all about biomaterials and growing stuff. It's super innovative and fun. It runs usually once every 2 years. So if you see that, it's an amazing class. There's architecture students, biology students, neuroscience students, chemistry students, economics students, students from all over the university. And it's super fun because you get to work on real world problems. I also run the textile lab. Don't be scared to go up there. You can always come visit, check out what we have. There is a crew of students up there that are very open and wonderful to help you expand your skills or answer any of your questions. I'll hand it over to Chrissy so she can introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I know I've met some of you, but I'm Chrissy Ruby. I'm a fashion design instructor or professor here, and I've mostly taught. I taught the BFA class when I first got here. Now I mostly teach like junior studio and the tech apps class and some other things. I've taught draping, and I came across CLO3D when the pandemic happened, which most of us did, and I got really excited about the possibilities and what I could do with it, and that's kind of core to kind of my design process. And I really appreciate hand work processes and craft. I really appreciate that, so much more when I use digital technology. It allows me to do so much more as one person or even as a team. So I see the benefits. Also, waste a lot less paper. I can make quick adjustments to fit. Currently, I'm working on designing bras in CLO3D, which is a whole different challenge. So I'm really passionate about that. So and there's so much that CLO3D can do, and there's so much more that I can even still learn. So we're all going to continue to grow because it's got so many opportunities. So that is me.
And hi everyone, my name's Daniel. Ooh, that's bright.
Yes. Very bright.
I'm a fashion instructor here at the school as well. When I first started, I was working in fashion drawing and tech apps, and then I've done flat pattern, junior studio, and product development on the merchandising side as well. I came here from Kohl's, where I was a designer there for several years, and I was actually here at Kent State for my undergrad program, and just absolutely loved Kent so much that I came back. CLO3D it's been really amazing that we have this opportunity to bring this to this school, because this is something that's happening all over the industry right now. So much innovation that is happening. We good?
Yeah, we're good.
The innovation that's happening right now with this is we're cutting down lead times. We're cutting down we're also like our waste. You're able to design things you weren't able to before because of this technology. And yes, it is a very, very beast of a machine to a certain degree, because there's a lot of complexities that go into it. And we are all here to learn as well, and we're learning as we're going through this process, and that's what this community is all about, is to bring us all together and just continue to push this forward. So we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it indeed is, but it's just a peek at what 3D can do. Eventually, we'll be doing rental workshops and 3D printing workshops and moving into actually producing 3D garments, 3D printing with garments. But what's great about this is theoretically, you could go in here, design the whole garment, then laser cut the fabric and then put it together. So cut having to do muslins.
Pretty much.
But when it comes down to it, you can't run before you walk. You have to know how to do this. That's why there's the 2D component. You have to learn that aspect before you push
it
the
makes
3D.
sense here. Yeah, it's so important to know the physical part too, just so you have that background to understand it. So that's why we're going to really focus on connecting those two, so it makes sense from here to the screen and help you realize that it's all integrated and you know how to do that and put those together.
So I have a brief minute and something video.
13 versions and hundreds of new feature additions later, continue to transform the way we produce and consume garments. Born as the twin to marvelous designer, CLO started out with some of the same foundational features, but quickly evolved into its own unique program to meet the needs of users in the apparel industry. As a 3D design software offering unlimited real-time interactivity, ease of use, and accurate materials, CLO has revolutionized design processes for fashion and garment businesses for more than a decade. From the introduction of simulation in November 2014 to the newly added auto-sewing feature in CLO6, CLO has been committed to making every version better than the last. Since its inception, CLO has made significant improvements across each step of the supply chain for companies that have implemented the software. Whether you're a vendor, technical designer, pattern maker, or in merchandising, sales, or marketing, there is without a doubt an empowering way to leverage our technology. Reducing the length of the design process and time to market, CLO also allows companies to communicate with other departments in real time and improve the quality of the creative process. As a brand who also serves a wide array of users, it is important for CLO to have something for everyone. From freelancers, creators, and hobbyists to big box retailers, vertical brands, studios, and creative agencies, CLO has a solution for you. CLO3D.com. Step beyond design.
So just a brief history of CLO. Oh, I think, where's my shared window? Yes, where is my shared window?
There. Oh, it's
I
up
don't
there.
want this.
That one.
Yes,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay. The creator of CLO wanted this virtual fashion platform, but at the time they created it, it actually was too ahead of its time. The folks that were integrating this in production were filmmaking games, that sort of thing. So they created a sister product called Marvelous Design, and that focuses, it's very similar. So if you learn CLO, you can work in Marvelous Design. So you could be a designer for gaming. But so it makes you a little bit more marketable as well. But then eventually the fashion industry caught up with virtual fashion, and then CLO really, especially now with the pandemic, people were adopting virtual fashion platforms at an alarming speed. This and PLM and all sorts of other tools. So.
And CLO is definitely very accessible, and if you've ever worked with any of the, like Gerber, or I'm just going blank on other names, but
Yeah.
the interface is much more user-friendly, and it has some of the, like, we're familiar with like an arrow, like a clicking, and some of the Bezier curves and things like that we're used to in Illustrator. So it has these similarities that make it a lot more user-friendly, and it's a little more accessible.
And I think that also comes from the lineage, because it looks very much like a 3D software. So if you go into a 3D modeling package industry like Maya or I don't know, Moto or any of that, it's very much that look and feel and aesthetic, where other ones did start 3D fashion earlier, but they still have like this Windows 95 feel.
Very much
so, and it's a little bit more difficult to find where the different tools are, because behemoth.
Yeah, it's
3D fashion is a behemoth with all the different settings and things you can do, because it has to virtualize everything we do in the real space. So a little bit of CLO here, just some links, and this PDF is in the OneDrive for the class, which the link was in your reminder email. And I guess I'm just gonna leave these two to do this.
And please jump in,
Jump in.
add things.
If you have any questions while this is running, just, me or Ms.
Yeah,
Benitez,
raise your hand.
because I can come and help you while they're teaching. Yeah, so that's where.
I think what we'll do is we'll kind of go through this and talk through it, and then we'll have time that you can, like, at the end where it's more like space to, like, play, work on it, work through it. We have some things like that, and so we can do that as well. But these are some links about CLO3D that you might want to check out from CLO3D. There's also an article just talking about how a company incorporated CLO3D into their workflow and what it was helping them with. So kind of like the video said, it can generate and visualize many designs very quickly. You can try different colors, you can change your sleeve length and see how that looks, like that, instead of cutting your pattern and taping it back together and all of those kinds of things. So you can try out a lot of different things. Your sleeve, let's try to slash and spread and make it a balloon sleeve, or, and then if you don't like it, just undo it and go back to where it was. So you can try things out really quickly. Print, you can actually make your print in Photoshop or Illustrator and put it in CLO3D and apply it to your garment, which is really fun. Also, you can actually develop more of like a 3D technical drawing. You could use it for that. Evaluate first samples for fit digitally or in multiple samples. You generate marketing images, videos. You can make a runway show in CLO3D. You can try different colorways and options. I was talking to someone a former student of mine that's now working for a company, and the way they actually started using CLO was to actually make all their different colorways for their website, and to share that with their clients. So that's how they got started, and they're slowly learning and putting it into their sample room so that their pattern makers can use it. So it can do those kinds of things. And I put what other possible benefits can you identify. So if you think, is there anything else you can think of, or anything that this does, right, and improves upon? Any other thoughts? Other things you could apply it to?
It's more sustainable because you don't waste as much fabrics and sampling.
Much more sustainable.
Yep, you can skip. Go through, think about, you do like a first sample, a second sample, or we call them like muslins, You could, maybe go through that a little bit further, really get that more perfected before you commit. So it's probably going to be a lot close, it's going to be what you want. And maybe there's tiny adjustments, but then you can just quickly change it, you're done. and you only had to make the one instead of, you know, 2 or 3, or more. I've certainly done more. So, and then less paper, time. So it can be a lot more efficient.
Especially in the industry, whenever you are developing a style, they will send you multiple samples back and forth. And we're talking it takes 2-3 weeks, because especially if one of your vendors is overseas, it takes a lot of time just to like barely alter a shoulder seam to bring it forward, for instance. And that production time, we call it lead time. So typically Clo is cutting about 15 weeks out of lead times for most companies right now. And additionally, on top of that, having this knowledge actually is extremely marketable. Some of the big brands that are utilizing Clo now, such as Nike, Adidas, let's see some other ones. Diesel is now using that, D Squared, Macy's, Kohl's, and there is a whole plethora of them. If you go onto the website, you can actually see all the major brands that are working with it, and this makes you marketable to those companies. Also, as you enter the industry, you're going to have knowledge that your people that are above you, for instance, such as an associate designer or senior designer, does not. So it makes you even more so marketable because you have the knowledge of what the future is.
That they might need to bring forward.
Exactly.
And it's also, I guess the other thing too is if you think about Clo is pretty accessible, like for the cost. I think it's only like $50 a month for just a person anyone can get it. And so you don't have to, you don't have to invest in like this giant, have this giant investment. So even as like, if you wanted to start your own company, you could have CLO3D and develop an entire line and present it and see if you could, market that before you really put a lot of money into it. Obviously you have to have production in line for it ready to go, but you could develop things and, before committing to all those samples, all of that time. So you could do like that.
One of our goals by the end of this school year, we would like to be doing a runway show, which would be a lot of fun. So that's a goal. We'll see if we get there.
And one more thing. So the Fashion Tech Hackathon, which happens in January every year, last year Clo sponsored Best Digital Fashion Piece, and these students received a 1-year subscription to Clo. So hopefully we'll be having something to that effect, another digital fashion prize. So it might not be a Clo for a year, depending if Clo sponsors or not. I have yet to speak to them yet, just yet for that. I'll be speaking to them soon about that. But this is a skill that you could absolutely use for that hackathon and win some money or other types of prizes. So you're kind of one step ahead of the game with the other students from school because you can be the digital fashion person.
All right, so I think we're good here. So let's just jump right into it. So what we really wanted to do in this is really help you connect what you know about pattern making, with paper, pencil, the dress form, a measuring tape, the way it's been done for a long time. How does that connect what we do in 3D? Because it does. It's completely a different environment. So I like to think of like we have physical environment and we have digital environment, and it's really important that we know how to navigate between the two because with so many things digital, we have to be able to connect those. And the more we can do that, the faster we know, okay, this is to do by hand. This is going to be easier to do digitally, and know how to work quickly and efficiently and how to work between those. So this is what we know, right? We have paper, we have some up here, we have a dress form, measuring tape. So that's what we're, it's kind of what we've done for a long time. So the digital workspace, describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the digital workspace is one, you have an avatar. So the avatar is actually the same as the dress form. And then your 2D window is pretty much your table, more or less. And then of course we have the patterns, and you see that square up there? That's your paper. So the similarities, they're actually the same thing. There are some things that are easier to do one or the other, but fundamentally they are the exact same things, just two different spaces. Now, when it comes to the toolbars, when you think of drawing tools such as pencils, you have the line tool, for instance, or you have the internal polygon line tool. Cutting, you click on the line, right click, and you're able to cut, and the notching marks. And then we have the seam allowances, just like how you'd add them on paper. The only difference is you just do a click and enter that number and it automatically does it for you. And it's nice and smooth, and you don't have to spend a lot of time pretty much making sure that line's perfect.
So if we think about it, dress form is avatar. This is the notcher button. This is our notcher, right? So it's the same thing, it just does it digitally. This is the digital seam allowance button, instead of doing it with paper and a see-through ruler. So it's the same thing, it's just a little button, right? And you click on that, usually you click on it and then go click and it puts it there for you. And then there's ways to like do it where it's maybe a little more precise. So you usually have a few options like where it goes, but it's the same thing, right? It's just learning what all of these little, what all of those little tools do, right? So we have like different drawing tools here. That's the notcher, that's seam allowance. We have wash, measuring, labeling tools. We have sewing. You can even steam. There's a little steaming tool. And I haven't really used that much. So so there's all kinds of things here. And then you have in this window is where you kind of virtually sew it together. So this will be you can sew it together here. You have these two spaces that are the same. And like DJ was talking about, like a table, like this gridded area, like think of that as your table. Like think about, we have those cutting mats. I mean, that's kind of what you've got there, right? And these are pieces of paper that are on that table. And you're just modifying them with the tools. So we're going to talk about the women's bodice sloper. And the reason we picked this particular sloper or pattern is we're all pretty familiar with it. We've all seen it by this point. And one of the reasons to start with it usually is because it actually has a lot of curves to it. So it's kind of one of the more challenging shapes. So it's good practice for having contrast curves, trying different shaping techniques and those kinds of things. So that's why, like in draping, you probably started with it. Pattern making, you always start with that because it incorporates a lot of skills that you're going to need to learn. If you think about it though, I mean, you could drape over anything. You could drape over a ball or, a chair, and try darts and things to make it shape. But since we're doing clothing, we usually start with a clothing pattern. Think about a shoe too, like you could drape a shoe if you look at the pattern on your shoe. So we're gonna go a little more in depth. So the first thing is we have for the, we need measurements to start developing this pattern, right? To develop this. So if you have taken pattern making and learned CLO3D, if you follow through those tutorials, it gives you specific measurements, right? To follow. So if you've done that, it gives you specific measurements in the tutorials. Those measurements are based on either a person or a dress form. So you could put in whatever you wanted to into those. But we have key points of measure. So we've got like high point shoulder, which I could point at maybe this work. Oh yes, that works. So like we have center back, center front. We have high point shoulder, which is here on the avatar, center front, high point shoulder, the shoulder here, and you can have these lines on your avatar, so there's different views, so you can turn them off or turn them on when you need them. And you can usually click on these lines and kind of highlight different areas. So we have all of these different things. This is actually more, you get more out of this than you would here. Here we don't have the legs, so you'd have to have a leg form to get those measurements. But you can see we have hip lines, the traditional princess seam, bust, anything else to add? So you have all of those, they're all the same. One's on an avatar and one's on a dress form. If you were measuring for a specific person, you could measure a person too, right? So we're just using a virtual person. So first we're going to talk about the physical sloper pattern development. So if you have a pattern making book, every pattern making book pretty much, there is usually measurements. So this is actually ASTM measurements, which is kind of a standard. If ASTM is kind of a standard body that kind of develops standards for all kinds of things. It's not just fashion. I mean, you can't even imagine how many different kinds of things. I'm on the email. I got, what was it, like volumes of something, liquids, like it was completely unrelated to fashion in any way, shape, or form. Or usually pattern making books will have like some sort of list of measurements. So it's got different sizes up here. So we've got 00 to 20, and then you have like this head girth. So how big the head is in each of these sizes, and kind of like a graded scale. So if you wanted to grade products based on this, you would use those different, those changes between the two. So this can give you those measurements you need for all of these points. So so you would plot all of these points based on these measurements to get these two shapes, right? So you start slow. You don't draw all the lines at once, but like A to B, and then B to C, and you work through it, right? And then you end up with the pattern. So we have a physical pattern. We have our everything marked, and you can see I've done this on the fold. In CLO3D, you work on the half and you click a button and it generates the other half. So you do symmetrical pattern and it'll do that for you. And we have our darts and everything. So that's how you get to a paper pattern. So let me talk about that one.
Yep, and then we've got the digital sloper pattern. And as you can see, those measurements are exactly the same. Whether you're doing physical or digital, you have to plot all those points out to get an accurate sloper. So fundamentally, these two things are the exact same. They follow the same process, they use the same measurements, and they use the same lines to plot those points. And the big key thing here is make sure you have the pattern making book, because that is a really wonderful tool, and you're going to need that whether you're doing digital or you're doing physical. Either way.
So that one.
Then, as you can see, the only big difference between digital and physical is that in the digital workplace, you can see the garment fit in real time before you actually sew it up. So that is one huge advantage here. But as you can see, just like how we saw the physical pattern, this also has the seam allowances. We have the notches. And then, of course, we've got the darts, and then we've got the center front seam. And then it also has that labeling as well, which we'll be going over how to get all these things to work in CLO. Yes?
What pattern making book do you recommend that helps with CLO3D and like 2D pattern?
Any of them. It doesn't matter.
But the one, so there's the Helen Armstrong version, that's what? Pattern making for fashion designers, I believe it's called. I really like that one, but there are several different ones.
It's not that
There's
one.
also one, actually, you have access to one on through Kent, which are we going to cover that?
Yeah, there's a link later on.
Yep.
So there's
we'll
one
show
you
you
can
that
get free through the Fairchild Library. I don't know, every semester it's like, is it going to be there again? So I can't guarantee it'll be there. I think it's throughout the year, or I don't even know. But it's there now, so you can use it. But you should have a pattern making book. I still have mine from undergrad, and it is the Armstrong one, the Helen Armstrong, and I like it better than the one on Fairchild Library. But you can do the same thing. I mean, it's not like you'll get to the same end result. I just prefer it because that's how I learned. So
it is an expensive book, but if you go on Amazon, you can usually snag one up for like 60 to 80 bucks. Typically brand new, they run between like 150 to 250 depending on where you're getting it from. But having that book is really, really, really important. We can't stress that enough. So if you don't have that book, please go out and pick that up. Even are the ones that are used where it says like it's acceptable or not very good, it's still fine. There just might be some additional penmanship that's been added to it by So here you can see some of the similarities between the two when it comes to what this looks like in the physical pattern making and wait, am I getting off here?
Yeah, that's the physical on the, well, you're looking at it, it's your left that you're looking at. So this would be what you see in like a pattern making book. So this would be kind of the start of the slope curve. It could be, you know, so this is like step 1, draw this line, right? And then this is kind of the end. I don't have like the different processes, but the thing here is that with this, you have these lines on a piece of paper, right? You'd go get a piece of paper, pattern paper, you put it on the table, and you would start drawing the lines. Well, in CLO3D, if you just open CLO3D, which I can open this here, if you don't have this, move the whole thing. Let me move it. Well, if it's here, it's just blank. It's basically the table. You have no paper, so you need paper first, right? You can't start your project without some paper. And so in CLO3D, instead of getting just a big chunk of paper, you draw the box of paper, or the, you know, a rectangle of paper exactly the size that you want it, right? So for this one here, if I this, I'd probably draw my box like this red rectangle here. I would use the B to E measurement and the A to B measurement as my height, width and height, right? So then I plot that, I put my rectangle in here, and then you can see there's some extra here that you'll need to add, and you can add on to that rectangle in 3D. The other thing would be is if you see this, you could be like, okay, I can figure out where B over to wherever this point is, and make your rectangle go out to there, right? So you'd end up in the same place. You just kind of, you can decide how you want to do it. Does that make sense? Does anyone, is that like, does that make sense? Because with this knowledge, you could take any slope or any kind of garment development, flat pattern process that you come across. I mean, it could be not even a pattern making book, it could be something you came across. You could apply that to CLO3D, right? If you know how to draw in CLO3D. And that's the biggest thing you need to remember, is that you have to start with more of a box. Because if you think about it, you haven't yet, so you may as well cut the, don't just draw a big old box and try to like draw inside of it. Draw your paper the right size and then plot inside of it. Like,
Oh, no, that was perfect.
so, and the other thing too is like the this process, like if you were to go into Gerber's the same. You have to draw a box first. Like any 3D process that I've seen with pattern making, you have to start like this. So if you were to play with one of those other programs, so far as I've experienced, you always have to start with something. You can't just draw freeform. And then what you do is you draw the box, and then you draw in, it's called internal polygon line. So they're lines inside of the shape. So we wanted to, so we have the digital and physical here, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And we're going to, ooh, let's turn on the light.
I got it.
Okay, cool.
While you that, there was a question on Teams
Yes.
about if there is an avatar pre-made for the KSU size 6 dress forms.
There is not, I do have that file. I could share that in our student resources.
Okay, fantastic.
I can also share a file on how to create it as well.
That would be even better.
Yes. Yeah, a file to create that, and yeah, that would be good. Sure. So we have this here. So what I want to go over is, I wonder if we could.
I'm going to turn the power
Oh,
off real
thank
quick.
you. I was like, weird.
Yeah.
All right, so I wanted to, can we see? Okay, we can see this. So I wanted to go over a couple things that you have to do. So once you would develop this pattern, or any pattern, whether it be paper or CLO3D, there's a couple more things that you need to do. The first one I want to talk about is blending the curves. So if you have a pattern like this, you have to make sure, so you would overlap this at the seam allowance, which sometimes I will actually fold the seam allowance under. So fold it under. So that way, I'm basically sort of testing out sewing this together. So you put this here, and you want to make sure that this is a smooth curve, okay? So if we're not a smooth curve, so say this lines up like this, then we have a point right here, right? So we don't want that. We don't want a point underneath there. I guess unless you design something that way, but usually if you're doing a sloper, you're not gonna have it that way. So you have to go in, if it's not like this, you wanna smooth it out, right? So you still have to, so you wanna check that. So you're gonna check this one. You would also check here. Just drag this down. Are we still in the view?
Yeah, you're still in the video.
Because I can't see. So then this one, you would check here to make sure you have smooth curve. Okay? So you always want to make sure that you check that. And that is whether you're in paper or digital. So I'm showing you paper first, and then we're going to show you how to do it in CLO3D. So check that. The other thing you need to do is you always want to walk your seams. You want to make sure while you're doing this, you go through and make sure that this is the right length, right? So this matches up. This is another area where you got to blend too. Anywhere there's curves joining, you got to blend. If you're doing your own design, you have to figure out where all those points are, right? But we want to make sure that it walks. So if it's, like this, obviously we have a problem. That's not going to sew together very nicely. So fix that. Usually if it's this off, you might want to check, see if you forgot something. If it's just a little bit off, you just go in between the two and blend it together. But you do that any of the seams. So you walk this one, you walk this, and then, so you would do that in all the seams that you have. So those are really, really important steps to making a really clean pattern, and it seems to get missed a lot. So I wanted to point that out, but it's also, you don't skip that in CLO3D either. So I will let you, we can share this again, and you can, I'll just do the screen. Do you want to talk about it here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So similarly, let's start by getting rid of some of these seam allowances so we can see how those are added.
Hold on, we need to move the.
Oh, sorry. It's our first atelier.
I even attempted to do something like virtual and physical space before the pandemic, which is really exciting that we realize we can do these things.
Exactly.
It's not up yet, so I'll give it a minute. In the interim, does anyone here have any questions?
Yes.
Not yet.
Okay, not yet, but you do.
Do we turn on CLO3D as well?
If you want
If you'd like to.
Yeah, open it up.
You're more than welcome to.
Because we're gonna play with it a little too.
But you probably want to watch what they're doing and then.
Yeah,
And
I
don't try to follow along. Is what I'm
so
saying.
watch it, and then we have like some tutorials and things like that you can work on. Because the other thing is, I'm sure there's a very wide variety of different levels with CLO3D. So we have some different things that you can do, and then we're here to help you or work together. We get through the presentation. So
let's start with talking about walking. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these seam allowances real quick. As you can see, I'm up here on the seam allowance tool, and I'm just clicking on those, and I'm just using the backspace or delete key. Much quicker than
cutting it all off.
Exactly.
And then the blue highlight around the back piece is because it's a mirrored in that other piece, right?
Exactly. We've got some linked editing going on between these two, which you can always have linked editing up if you're working on something that you want it to be symmetrical. If you're not, you can always turn that off as well. So let's start by walking these two seams here. So we're going to go ahead and use the walking pattern. So I'm going to click on this point, and then click on this point as well. Now, just like what Chrissy did with the physical pattern, I'm now going to walk it down and see how it does. And as you can see, it actually went really well. Everything's smooth, it looks nice. And then you can also, well, we're not going to go the opposite direction. So once you're done, you hit enter to make it suspend, and then let's do one more. Let's check here to here.
if you do like the shoulder and put a notch in it? Can you do that?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So let's start with that shoulder piece. So if we were going to add a notch, we're going to walk it. So we're going to go ahead and bring this on over. We're going to walk it down. Here, as you can see, that's where we're going to need to notch in order to make sure it looks with that shoulder dart in the back. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a point down right there.
I think if you right click, can you right click at that point?
We should be able to.
Yeah, and so then you can put add a notch to the stationary pattern.
All right,
Right click right there.
Right click.
Yeah, so it says add a notch, and then you do to the stationary pattern.
There we
and
go.
Now I have a notch.
That's simple. So that's one way that you can do your notching. And that's why walking is so important, and especially in this space. You can see how quickly you can really get these pieces to come together. I don't know why I was trying to do this one. That made no sense.
Oh, we should connect that one to that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do that one, do that one.
So we're gonna go ahead.
Sure, yeah, make sure it walks to your notch on the other side.
Exactly, so it notches perfectly.
And if it's off, what I've done is put a notch, like if they're off, I'll put a notch on what's wrong, so that I can go back and I can see like how far I need to fix it. And then I can fix the two.
So, next point is that there's one other way that you can notch, which is also very useful. If you use your edit pattern tool, whenever you click on a line, you get the exact measure of what it is. So here in this instance, it's showing that it's 3 inches and then 2 inches on the other side. So you're able to actually compare these two and see how they look. So for instance, in the like this side seam, we have 7.75, so 7 3/4. You come over to here, we have the same measure, 7.75. So that's another way to make sure that everything is lined up. Instead of pulling out your ruler, you just got to click the line. So it's a little bit easier. When it comes to labeling, what you do is up here is this giant A, and this is how you do your pattern annotation. So let's go ahead and drop one in.
That looks pretty much like Illustrator. You draw a box, right?
Exactly. So
and type it in.
Let's see. W, this is the women's top. I'm going to try to remember our coding system. W, then the year is for 2022. This we're going to put into fall, so that's 3. This is a top, or no, it's a woven, so it's another W. And then the season, we're going to put this in for spring, so that would be 2. And then this is the first number in our sequence, so 0. And then we're going to add the fit, which is a straight fit. Don't know how I remembered that, but I did.
I don't either.
So we've got that there. Additionally, if we wanted to edit it, we can go ahead and pull this around, our annotation a little bit. It's not letting me return. Oh. All right, so then this is a size 6, and then we're going to just cut 1. So it's that, right? And of course, if you want to label this, you could label it also, you know, front, bodice front. Learning how to spell still, don't mind me.
I do it all the time when I'm typing.
There we go. So that's how you would add some of your pattern annotation in. For some of you, this might be a refresher. Others might be something new. So that's why we're covering all this. Seam allowance. Here's something really great. Whenever you add seam allowance on here, you just click on the line, for instance, and you see it adds it. If you go to your property editor, you can actually change that input. So here at Kent State, our standard seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. So all you have to do is put 0.5, and then it will actually change it to that. Or in the instance of like the back, where we're putting a zipper in there. So we have what? Was that be 3/4 to 1 inch? So based on our book, so it'd be 0.75. We're able to add all these measurements in pretty quickly. Now, whenever you have notching marks like this, sometimes you'll get this little tiny notch out of there, but we don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. Necklines, we know necklines are, if it's a finished neckline, that's going to be 1/4 if it has a facing attached to it. So as you can see, we're kind of just going through and adding these in. So it's the same exact process. It's just a little bit different tools. That's really what it is. All right, back to our
I guess the other thing too is if you look at it, so labeling, I feel like that's always, you've probably had different instructors tell you different ways to label things, possibly. The key things you need are the style number, how many to cut, and what the size is. Those are the 3 main things. And you want to write it out in some sort of format that it's clear. One of the biggest things is if you have, article size, you don't want that to get confused with the cut. You don't want 6 of these cut when you only needed, 1 or 2, right? You don't want to confuse that we need 6 in a size 1, which is like junior sizing. So you want to make sure that's very clear. And like the way I learned to do it would be to do a circle around how many you cut instead of the number. But you can just write size and cut, and that's how we do it in Close. So it gets you to the same thing. So that is what we have for that's kind of an overview of getting from 2D to 3D. So are there any questions, or is there anything that anyone's kind of run across? I'm confused how to do this. I know how to do it in one, and I don't know how to do it in the other. And it could be, if you learned in 3D during the pandemic, how do I do this on a paper? Or, I learned on flat pattern and I don't know how to do this in 3D. Are there any questions about that, or things you've run into that you're struggling with? Yeah.
Can you drape in CLO3D?
You can.
Yes.
We've had a lot of discussion about that. Basically, I will let you speak to that.
Yeah,
because you've tried it more than I have.
It's totally doable. The program really is designed for more flat pattern. You can absolutely drape on the 3D window. It though is the issue, is that it's just a little bit more challenging. But you can utilize the 3D window, for instance, in putting like style lines in, cutting hems, for instance. Like if everything was irregular at the bottom, you could use the garment added pattern tool, and it would literally just put a circle around it. You can just right there. So there's some really cool features, but actually draping on it, it's pretty complex. So maybe we'll do that next year for Atelier next
That's
year.
another workshop.
Yeah, that'll be a whole nother workshop.
Because you were saying you really want to know the flat pattern really well. One thing I've done, the way I've worked with any kind of draping, was that I'm trying to do bra. So to create, you need an underwire. So you have this bra pattern, but without an underwire, it doesn't, it just sort of floats there, right? So the way to develop the underwire is you actually draw on the avatar. It's like a pin. You draw on the avatar this shape, which is kind of how you do draping, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you create this pattern piece. It shows up in your window, this shape, and then you have to go through a few steps that sort of sticks it to the form so it doesn't move, and then you sew your pattern pieces to it, so it's stuck to the form. So, and the way I found that out was I was Googling. The CLO website actually has a lot of answered questions. And also there's a community of people that are that actually answer some questions. So I actually found it out through somebody who had posted, this is how I solved this problem. So that's how I found out how to do that. I kept trying things, and that's where I found that. So that's a really great place to look if you're stuck. I've definitely gone there a few times when I was like, I don't know how in the world to do what I'm like I said earlier, we weren't sure, which this is about an hour, which gives us about an hour of time to play. So we want you to be able to play with CLO. And we're here to help you, and also you can help each other. So, but we don't know where everyone's skill level is at this point. Maybe you've taken a class, maybe you haven't. So there's kind of some different things. So this is kind of, if you're just learning to use this program and you've never really done a whole lot with it, these two videos, so these are links to the CLO YouTube tutorial channel. So that's also where that's how I learned, because, you know, there were no tutorials. So CLO3D, and these two, so this one here really goes through like how to use the shapes, like just the tools, how to draw, how to create shapes, and it walks you through that. So that was one of the best things. That's kind of where I started. The other one, let's go over here. Maybe I got this backwards. Oh, they're in order. This one really walks you through some of the tools up here. I think one of them has changed a little bit with an update, but if there's an update, usually it's just kind of a slight modification. You just roll with it and figure it out. It's not too different. But this shows you how to like draw lines in between these shapes and how to like cut and like want it to slash and spread type thing, get smaller, those kinds of things. This one is a really good video to show you how to do that. And when you learn how to do that, then you can do so many more things. If you know how, like in a box, you draw a line through it, you can right click, cut them apart, you can, and then rotate one this way, and then you can draw a line at the bottom and join it all together, and you have a slash and spread. So these two, once I watched these, I could do a lot of things and figure out a lot. So if you've never worked with CLO, I would say to start here. You could develop a sloper. So you could get started with developing a sloper, like we were showing you. I've got a link to the pattern making book here. So this is the pattern making book that's, you know, free. So there's a measurement chart here, and you could go through, and if you go all the way to, it's pretty close to the bottom. So this one is actually maybe would be kind of handy because it starts it out in a box already, so you don't have to figure that out. So you can see it starts here, and then you go through and plot all of these lines to develop your bodice. You could use measurements if you wanted to take measurements on yourself, you know, you could do that and get started with that. Or also because I have a pattern making book, I took pictures of my pattern making book because you can see how you get to the same end result, but it's just a little different process, right? So, and I did on this one, so it has the front and the back. I didn't mean to include that page, but this one I included the skirt, the sleeve, and also jeans. So like a jean foundation. So it's not quite like a trouser pant. It's like a jean foundation. So you could do that. If you already have worked with CLO a lot, I'll let you develop those. I'll let you share that.
So if you have developed CLO before, has anyone heard of the Transformative Reconstruction method by Sato? Okay, so this is really cool. So Sato is a Japanese fashion designer and developed this, and the whole concept is to take a basic bodice and sew it together and then draw new lines on it. Once you've drawn new lines, from that you're able to cut patterns out, and you end up with these really bizarre shapes, as you can see, you can see down here. But they come together to make really gorgeous designs. When it comes to like methodology and utilizing this specific techniques, this is when you see those really amazing garments on the runways that have that construction. You're like, how did they put that together? This is the method that they use. You can do this in the physical workplace, but you can also do this in the digital as well. So this is one of the things we have here. You see there's a link to the tutorial if you'd like to give that a shot. It is a bit more because it also utilizes the 3D window and the 3D pen tool. So it's a little bit different, and that's going to be a new tool you haven't used yet if you've taken flat pattern.
I may have messed up the link. So I'll fix the link. We can put it in the chat or something if you want to do that. Okay.
And then additionally, in the folders that we just have on OneDrive, there's also the videos for the slopers. If you're having trouble correlating the measurements from the book It actually will walk you through the measurements in the book and how to get them into CLO3D. It's not really beneficial to just go through and just kind of follow the video, because you really want to have that piece of paper in that book in front of you so you know where those measurements are coming from. That's the really important element here.
And both of these links are wrong, so I'll fix those shortly.
On the pattern project.
Yeah, for some reason the links are wrong. I was having trouble with that earlier.
Additionally, we chose a bodice from the Pattern Magic book, and I think it's called Like a Jungle, and it's pretty much 4 different pieces of the garment that are, here it is, that is pattern made, and then it's put together in this really interesting shape. So I've included this picture of this book, and I've included the basic slopers in that file as well. And I have different stages of it where it's just the basic sloper. I also have the stage where it's broken out into these 5, and then you have to draw the lines either way. But I just want you to get used to putting things together and how those things kind of come together. But yeah, so pretty much you got some really cool things you can play around with here.
So what we propose is for the rest of the time here, pick one thing to work on, or if you have something else, if you have like your own something you're working on, bring that in, and that would be something like you've got something you're working on and you're struggling with or something, bring that in with you, like a file, that kind of thing. So we're going to leave this as open time for you to start playing with this. We're here with any question or to help you to problem solve, right? So let's try it. Let's play with the program. I think, and if we need to, do it, look at this part, we can share it here if we all need to look at it. We can, I think that you're on Teams, I'm on Teams. You could get on Teams too if there's anyone online. There's 3 of us that could work with you individually probably, and in the classroom. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Are there questions online?
No,
Any
not
questions?
yet. Not
Okay.
yet. So probably we'll stop recording for the time being
Yeah,
until we
that
demo
sounds good.
something.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That way, when it's put on YouTube, there's not like this extra space of time where there's nothing. Looks like nothing's happening.
Yes, nothing is happening.
I guess if you want to move on to that. Okay, you're used with the Mac.
Yes, I am.
So you can go.